The kiddos are going back to school, and that means that the summer box office for 2023 is coming to a close. But what a box office it has been, bipolar if you will. Yes, we have seen significant duds like The Flash and Indiana Jones: The Dial of Destiny. We've also seen the potential billion-dollar Barbie, the movie that is showing everyone just how much women love Barbie and maybe dislike men. However, there are a few gems in this rough that we need to talk about. Two movies which have done the spectacular. They have held at the box office. They have legged out, if you will, to an incredible amount, to an incredible degree, and they're making money, perhaps, for their creators. All right, folks, welcome back to another insightful video here on the WDW Pro channel. A pleasure, as always, to share our time with you, and today we are sharing time with Jeff of World Class BSers. Jeff, welcome back to the channel.
Oh, thanks for having me, Pro. It's a pleasure to be back. It's always fun to talk pop culture, movies, entertainment, everything with you guys.
Exactly, and folks, if you like that sort of thing, you might consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and click it, stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. We're going to be talking today about two films which have had a tremendous hold at the box office, and I think have caught the industry, for surprise significantly. So let's take a look now at our first one that we are going to examine, this being Sound of Freedom. And by the way, Jeff, we want to find out, is there something in common with these two films? We'll reveal the second one in just a moment. But Sound of Freedom, folks, take a look at this chart. This is incredible. And remember that this is a film that is doing this with essentially no marketing campaign, with essentially no institutional support whatsoever, and perhaps full institutional disdain. It had no international release until recently. Now it's going to get plugged all over the world. That's not making some people in Hollywood happy. And it's doing this with a $15 million budget. That's right, you heard that correctly. $15 million. And if we take a look, Jeff, at what we've got here, from thenumbers.com, they have a graph. And this graph shows us what the algorithm, would typically see as the potential for the film. That's this sort of beige-colored range that's provided to us. The yellow line, of course, is the tracking for the film and how it's actually doing. And what it's doing is, we now believe that Sound of Freedom, again with a $15 million budget, is likely to eclipse Indiana Jones: The Dial of Destiny domestically. And Indiana Jones: The Dial of Destiny, of course, had a massive, insane budget. This one did not. So, Jeff, why do you think Sound of Freedom is doing a thing such as this and becoming one of the biggest movies of the summer?
Well, I think it strikes a chord with a certain portion of the audience because action movies are always in vogue. Action movies always hit. It doesn't matter what era of film you're talking about. There's always iconic action films that stand up. But this being based on a true story, and especially we live in this era that's so politicized. Everything is politicized, from commercials to movies to TV shows, video games, toys, you name it. It's politicized. And I think this movie is just striking a chord with a large portion of the movie-going audience who likes a story about, a noble cause.
Protecting kids seems like a worthy thing to do. Now, I know that there's been some talk about the veracity of the claims and all that sort of thing. And, of course, on the left, they have attempted to control the narrative here and push that this film is adjacent to crazy conspiracy theories. I think that probably has less power, although I don't agree with, I guess, what the beliefs are of said conspiracy. But I don't know that claiming things are conspiracy theories any longer holds much weight, simply because of the type of world we've lived through for the past 3 or 4 years. It feels like we've been living through a domino series of conspiracies come to life. So, but in terms of this movie, I don't think it's portraying anything like that. I think it's portraying something that we probably know exists, right? We know that the worst of us take advantage of the least of us. And who's the least of us? Well, poor children. That's who would be the least. That would be who would be the most vulnerable. So I think it is depicting a reality out there that we need to take notice of. And if we want a fair and just world, then we need to be protecting the innocent. It reminds me, Jeff, I was reading an article earlier today from hotair.com where they were talking about solar panels and how, you put up your solar panels and you feel virtuous, right? It lets you feel like you're really saving the planet. It turns out that those solar panels, and by the way, if you go visit Walt Disney World, you'll see tons and tons of these. They chop down about 1,200 acres of wilderness and wildlife habitat to put their solar panels up. But if you see those solar panels, something that might surprise some people is, according to hotair.com, most solar panels are probably made by people who don't want to be making them and have no choice. And I'll let everyone out there figure out what word that is that continues to exist in the world. So we've got some work to do. Jeff, final thoughts on Sound of Freedom before we move to our second candidate.
It's just the movie that keeps on rolling. I mean, you mentioned its $15 million budget, and it's looking like it's not going to stop anytime soon. I expect this film to also be successful on home media, because if people are going to go out to watch this movie in theaters, more than likely they're going to buy the physical copy, which that's good for business. Now, because who knows how the streaming rights will work? Some places will want to host it. Maybe ideologically they'll refuse to host it. So maybe this movie can just win by being at the right place at the right time and just really representing the right things to a certain portion of the audience.
All right, so you have pointed out something that I had not thought of. I have never heard anybody make this point about this film, and what a fantastic thing you've brought to the conversation here. I had not thought at all about the power of the physical media purchase for Sound of Freedom. So we need to take a moment and think that through, because you're exactly right. This is the perfect film for people to buy on physical media, because the chances that it will be hosted at all, let alone in its original form, on a major streaming platform, very low. Perhaps someone will put it out there for a short duration, but this is one of those films that I would say has a target on it. So, folks, I'm fully on board with what Jeff's saying here. If you want Sound of Freedom after it leaves theaters, you better go get that Blu-ray, that DVD, or whatever you want to grab. You better get it while you can. Great thought, Jeff.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to our other candidate as well here, and this is Elemental. This is a real surprise, probably a surprise for many of you watching the video, but the Walt Disney Company does have a winner here. Not a winner perhaps in terms of making money, but a winner in terms of this thing started off in the absolute doldrums. This was a disaster, and it's not a disaster anymore. It is probably still going to lose money. When we take a look at it, it's currently pushing up to $400 million worldwide. It'll probably pass that at the box office this weekend. And it's done so because it has, again, defeated this range that was predicted for it. If you take a look at the past trends for films, of course, this was headed for something like, domestically, maybe $75 million. Now, it's legged out at this point where it's going to approach and surpass $150 million. That's a heck of a win. It's not going to make money, though, right? But that's not the sort of thing that you hope for when this thing opens as it did. That was foregone that it's going to fail in terms of financial success. It needs about $600 million to break even. However, this thing might get to 450. It might get to 475, especially as this strike in Hollywood goes on and leaves cinemas lacking in terms of content. And so Elemental has benefited from the fact that, other than Ruby Gillman, which is no threat at all, and other than Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, which I think is an abomination, this film has just had nothing pulling away family focus. And so families looking for something to take their kids to, they have one option. They have Elemental, and look what that has resulted in. Jeff, did you see this coming at all in terms of this film going from a disaster to just kind of a meh?
Not at all. I initially had talked about it when it first released, because that was that toxic box office weekend where everything seemed to die. And I thought, well, there goes another Pixar film that's not going to hit. And the numbers said that. That was the story that was going around. But I didn't see this coming. I couldn't have predicted that, because everyone discusses how Disney conditioned audiences to wait for Disney Plus for all their films. And so they had been. But Disney Plus isn't as profitable as Disney would like it to be. We don't have any stake in the matter. If we did, it'd be a weird thing. But we have just been watching it from the sidelines. And this one is impressive. I've seen articles pop up maybe once a week talking about how it keeps tracking up and up and up. And historically, Pixar films really do resonate with audiences. I think it was a lot of bad decisions on Disney's part over the last couple of years that kept people away from movies, as well as just a general sentiment of how Disney's perceived. And while I don't think that's changed at all, I do think the point that you make is the most accurate one, how there's a lack. because it's the summertime. Parents have kids all day long. They're stuck with them. They don't want to, maybe they can't go to the pool. There's been a heat wave across the country. It's too hot to go outside. So historically,
even the water's hot, Jeff. It's like a bathtub out there when you get in the pool.
Nobody wants that. You want a nice, cool, clear swimming pool to get into and have fun. But, I mean, growing up, I used to go to movies when it was really hot out. Yeah, we had air conditioning, but it would just be like, man, it's so hot and I want to do something. So you'd ride your bike and you'd go catch X-Men or something like that. And today, people take 3 and 4, 5 neighbor kids. They all go to see a movie together. I think that's what's happening here.
So, Jeff, I think the common thread between these two films, if we're looking for movies that have overperformed, and by the way, folks, we are not ignoring Barbie per se. Yes, Barbie is doing extremely well, but Barbie had a massive opening. That means that despite how good it's holding, it's still in its range that would be predicted based on how well it opened. It's at the very top of that, by the way, and it may give the Super Mario Brothers movie a run for its money, but it's still, after the massive opening, performing as one would expect within the appropriate range. These two films we're discussing, they're way, way, way outside of the expected range based on their openings. The common thread that I see between these two, between Sound of Freedom and between Elemental, is lack of competition. And so here's what I would say about this. We have not seen a film like Sound of Freedom, and I'm not saying that it's the only conservative film out there. I don't know that it is conservative. I don't know that it's politically conservative. How about that? It's not the only one out there. I don't know that Mission Impossible, that it was not reaching out to the people who love Top Gun Maverick, and those people probably tended to be moderate and conservative. So I don't mean it that way. What I mean is that Sound of Freedom is the first movie we've seen in a very long time that actually takes on something that is a faux pas, something that you should not discuss in Hollywood. It's taking on an issue that the Hollywood intelligentsia would rather not be made public. So we haven't seen competition in that regard for that kind of a movie. And so it's riding that wave of people who've been hungry for something that is actually virtuous in a way that isn't vapid. And when it comes to Elemental, of course, as we just discussed, there's no real competition in the children's animation category. So Disney, despite their horrendous opening for this film, they've just been riding the fact that they're the only show in town. And if you think Ruby Gillman or Ninja Turtles, this particular version of Ninja Turtles are actual competition, think again. Jeff, should we perhaps see films coming out of Hollywood that push the boundaries and tackle topics that the corporations might not like? And should we perhaps see more children's animated fare coming out of Hollywood taking on Disney?
Well, I would hope we see more animated fare taking on Disney, because I have a theory that I've always lived by growing up, and that the 1980s was the best decade for entertainment, and that's when Disney was at some of its weakest, and you had the most unique ideas come out of the 1980s. You had films that stand the test of time. And so when Disney is down, I think all of entertainment thrives. All of it. And so right now, Disney is down. Marvel really isn't really hitting anymore. All of their big brands that they've sunk money into, billions of dollars, were just lifeless. It's like going to McDonald's. You're like, yeah, I went to McDonald's. I ate something. I'm full, but it wasn't satisfying. I could have had a much better burger. So I do hope that more places come for Disney's place in the entertainment landscape. Super Mario, I loved that movie. It's the only film I've seen twice in theaters this year. I will buy that eventually when I get around to it. But you have these other movies that can come out and really kind of draw away from Disney. And also, too, in the 90s, you may have had the Disney Renaissance, but you had a lot of live-action kids movies that drew attention away from the Disney stuff as well. So there's an important balance that I find for entertainment to thrive. And so that's how I feel about the point about Disney and the other people coming for childhood animation. But I have to say, something like Spider-Man really resonates as well, because some of these big hits that might be kids' entertainment do have to be cross-generational. I may be in my 30s, but Mario was something I grew up with. So that's taken me, and then, my buddy who has a kid, he brought his kid, and it trickles down that way. So I think that's some of the power of some of this crossover appeal. That's what you need in these entertainment properties, per se.
Jeff, let's come back to your point about the 80s. That is fascinating. Are you suggesting that because of the weakness of Disney at the time, and Disney is a purveyor of tropes, that's not necessarily bad, but it's to say that Disney is leaning in the best of Disney's times, perhaps not today, but Disney is leaning into archetypal stories, fairy tales, right? And then reimagining those through the Disney lens. Are you suggesting that because Disney was weak at the time that we received more avant-garde art that was able to rise to the top and was very creative, like Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, etc.?
Exactly. And I'm glad you used Back to the Future as a point, because Back to the Future has some moments that Disney, because they went to Disney with that film first off, they said, no, that's too risque, that's too weird, that's too this, that's too that. I do think you need to test the boundaries in entertainment across the board, be it through comic books, animation, video games. It makes it interesting, because how many times can you go do the same thing over and over and be satisfied? Oh, it's like a James Bond film, and I love James Bond films. He saves the day every time. That's fine, but the way he gets to the end point is different enough that you keep going back. And if you have, the same story over and over again, you just don't want to return. And that's what Disney really brings to the table. In the 1980s, you had so many crazy ideas that maybe they fit structurally in a traditional package, but the ideas are out there. I mean, how many people would have thought of a business where you hunt ghosts, and that's your whole movie? And it was wonderful. A time travel.
Only Dan Aykroyd, apparently. Only Dan Aykroyd had that in his mind, apparently, in the way that he brought it forth. What a, Jeff, to explain that to somebody 10 years prior, the concept of Ghostbusters, it's such a strange movie, right? The whole thing about sliming people and trapping the ghosts, and the ghosts aren't necessarily from dead people, but they could be, but they're not necessarily. And what the heck is Slimer? Nobody knows. But what a weird, kooky, crazy film, and it is one of my favorite comedies of all time.
Same. It's inspirational to me, especially in my other work. But the thing is, those movies that had that landscape of the 1980s, they all stand the test of time. Because Disney, let's just use something really safe, like the Goonies. Disney wouldn't have the nerve to show a group of kids in that type of setting talking the way they did, acting the way they did. It would be a lot more buttoned up. But then you have something later in the decade like Stand By Me, which also fits into the Goonies thing. It's like, just because there was no Disney, kids' movies didn't have to be, all golly shucks, gee willikers and all that stuff like that. It could be very different. And that's the stuff that we grow up with and still watch, because it might be slightly mature, but we're all people and we all go through similar experiences. And those films have the things that we resonate with and don't necessarily grow out of. Disney stuff, everybody grows out of that.
Well, what a fascinating conversation. This did not go where I thought it would go. And those are my very favorite. I hope the audience has enjoyed it as much as I have. I had never thought about the fact that a weak Disney creates the opportunity for some of these other studios to bring forth entertainment that is very different, creative, unique, novel, etc. And I never connected that with the 80s. That was really the connection point I had not made. I'm so pleased that we had this. And folks, I think the takeaway from the surprises of this box office summer, Sound of Freedom is going to make a lot of money, way, way, way beyond what was invested into it. And Elemental is going to lose far less money than we originally thought. Both of those, it comes down to a lack of competition. And perhaps studios could be doing what Jeff's talking about and taking advantage of this weak point in Disney's history and bringing forth unique and creative and, dare I say, magical adventures for us to go on. I'm ready for some more Doc Brown, some great Scotts, and gigawatts, so I'll take them anywhere I can get them, folks. Jeff, where can people find you and these prescient points you make on this great, big, beautiful web out there?
Well, folks, you can find me over at World Class Bullshitters on the YouTube channel. You can find us on Rumble, Patreon, Twitter, Instagram, everywhere you want us to be. You can find us over there by using the World Class Bullshitters name. You can also find, if you like my takes and stuff I write, you can go to Stealing Solo and check out my book. There's all kinds of ways to find me and what I'm doing, because I'm making the internet a little more interesting take by take. So you can find me all over. Just Google World Class Bullshitters.
There you go, folks. Make sure you check out Jeff. He has fantastic content, even more deep thoughts, just like you heard in this video today. And if you liked those deep thoughts, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe. When you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. The conversation here has come to a close, but the commentary begins. Drop a comment down below. We covet your comments. We care about what you think. You've got a great mind, and we would love to hear what's in it. Folks, don't forget that if you would like to become a member of this channel and gain access to exclusive content, it's only the price of a soda per month. We have a great group of guests and a member-exclusive video that comes out today talking about their formative years in the franchises that molded their viewpoints for a lifetime. It's all excellent and it's all waiting for you. And wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
Oh.
What are you doing?
Well, you see, I wanted to get some inside scoops on Disney and their, different corporations, if you know what I mean. So I figured, by looking into this fistbowl and sucking it randomly with my own energy that I pay for, you paid for, I could do the whole experience where you can be a master and spy on your targets.
You're an idiot. If you want to get the inside scoop on Disney, or even other media organizations, you should check out thatparkplace.com and subscribe to WDW Pro's YouTube channel. That'd be way easier, more accurate, and, less dumb.
Are you saying I won't get accurate information this way?
No, you can't.
Who'd have think?